Chapter 1, Implementing and Monitoring Business Strategy, Video 2. So we're now up to, this is page 1-13, and what I want to do is get into lots and lots of question practice. So let's start again thinking about our case study exam techniques and what we just looked at the end of our video 1. So here we've got another question. This time this one's from December 2021, and again with all these questions I'm extracting, I'm taking out the important paragraphs and information so we don't have to read through the whole 2 pages of each of the section A case scenario. Let's do what we did, let's get into a rhythm. So first of all, let's read the first few paragraphs, the introduction of what the company does. So you've got a company here called Protex Group Limited. We can refer to them as the company. What do? Is they're engaged in the production of patented medical masks with different specifications and standards in sterilised, strictly controlled manufacturing warehouse. Strictly controlled manufacturing factory, located, it says, in mainland China for many years. It says the company sells the masks, this is to hospitals directly and other Asian countries. That's enough. We can see the company is producing masks in factories here in China and then selling them around Asia. Fine. Let's then look at the requirements. So let's go down here, let's see what they're asking us to do. So question 1, it says, acting as the financial controller of the company, prepare a memo. Now, as soon as you see a format, stop in the actual exam. It only takes a few seconds. Get out your answer book, write in question 1, and then let's put in here, this is going to be 2, and we're not going to fill it all out now, but when we come back to our answer, when we come to writing up our solution, we'll remember, the format. We need memo format, because you'll be surprised how many students in this actual exam forget the formats. So you can see it's going to be to the board of directors. This is acting as financial controller, so from the financial controller. And for the formats, to from, put a date in, and then for the memo, you put subject, and then just basically try to simplify what the requirement is asking you about. Let's continue on, let's focus now on what they're asking us here to do. So let's carry on reading. It says, acting as financial controller of the company, prepare a memo to the board of directors. It says, recommending the most suitable strategic model. And now, as soon as you see these ands, you're going to see this many times when we do question practice. I put a slash through it. That's because normally there will be a second part. So let's start breaking up this big long requirement. It seems first we need to do is recommend the most suitable strategic model. And then there's a second part just here. It says explain how the company can use it. So use the model. This is to review and evaluate value-added activities in the production of medical masks. And, so hold on, there is a number of things we need to do just here. Let's put down here second of all. So this is explaining how we can use the model to review the activities for the production of medical masks. Well, as we saw there in the introduction, that is currently what the company does. We saw the currently is manufacturing here masks. So what's the third thing? Let's carry on reading. It says, and how it can contribute to manufacturing, and it says here new medical protection suits. So this is a new area. We're not sure yet. We'll have to read the scenario, but it seems that this could be maybe a new product, what the company is thinking about launching. Then we've got those professional marks. You can see, look, 2 marks of communication skills. So that would be marks about the correct format and being direct to the board of directors, so telling them what they want to know, what is the most suitable model, and explaining how we can use the model. And then analytical skills, this would be from not only selecting the correct model, but then applying the model using suitable facts and issues from the scenario. This is a very large question, 15 marks. Let's start thinking about how we're going to break up those marks. We've got 3 areas, 3 things that they want us to do here. Do you think there's going to be 5 marks for, first of all, recommending the most suitable model? Of course not. Maybe 1 mark for this, so we need to write a lot more for this second part and this third part. That's where we're going to be scoring lots and lots of marks from. Again, if you want to go back to those verbs, you can see they're all covered. HACCP, recommend. If we go back, this is back to those verbs. Again, in our introduction here, you will see on page, this is page 8 here. Look, here it is. We've got recommend. Select the best course of action or choice. So here we need to recommend the most suitable model. And then use it for our analysis. We're going to see it's an analysis model. And then we've got explain. This one again, if we go back to our verbs, explain is a level 1 on page 6. So here it is, explain, make clear the details of something, show the reasons for it. So we need to explain how we can use it to review value-added activities. Now again, they're not mentioning the model. We need to think about what will be the most suitable model. So same as what we talked about at the end of video 1, 2 things you're looking for. Is there a hint in the scenario? Is there a hint in the requirements? Let's start with the requirements first of all. So in the requirement, look, they're talking about value-adding activities. So if we think about the model that looks at activities and creating value, well, it's what we looked at earlier. We saw Porter's value chain. This looks at activities creating value. So they're giving us a hint in the requirement, but second of all, look to see, can we apply the model from the scenario? Always 2 things. What's in the requirement? What's in the scenario? So if this is going to be Porter's value chain, it's going to be talking about things like inbound logistics, operations, outbound, and all those support activities that we saw earlier on. So let's just have a little read just here, because already they talked about producing masks. So there must be some kind of operations here. Let's carry on reading. It says the company has a few special patents for producing medical masks that provide competitive advantage and differentiation. Well, look, there's another direct hint. This model looks at differentiation and competitive advantage. So he's giving us lots of hints as to which model he wants us to use. Let's carry on reading. It says the manufacturing process. So here it is. This is how we produce the masks. It says they are processed, manufacturing process is fully automated and requires limited labor and supervisors to manage the process. So let's go back to the requirements again and let's start thinking about what we're going to write up to score the marks. This is now starting to talk about the operations of what the company does. So what we need to do in the second part is explain how we can use the model to review how we add value. Well, here you can see how the company adds value. It uses machinery which is fully automated. They don't require lots of staff and labor costs. They have limited labor, limited supervisors to manage the process. Then we need to talk about how that could add value. How, let's go back to the requirements again, how that can contribute to the new medical protection suits. Well, once we've done a little detailed read, you would have found here they talk about the pandemic has generated increased demand. This is in medical protection suits. The company is therefore considering the production of medical protection suits in the existing market. So this is why we're now thinking about maybe using the value chain. Can that contribute to producing a new product? This is what they are wanting us to suggest. Well, would having automated facilities in production, in manufacturing, would that help the new product? Definitely. You know, maybe we would need some new machines. Maybe the production's going to be slightly different, but certainly the knowledge, the experience we have of automation, the fact that we can use limited labor and supervisors, that is all going to help us to deliver this new product. So yes, that can create value. Let's carry on reading next. It says the company acquires all raw materials through long-term contracts with reputable and stable suppliers and keeps all medical masks sterilized in a well-controlled warehouse owned by the company. All of that is how it gets its raw materials in and how it stores them. So this is again all inbound logistics. So again, this is how the company adds value. It's made sure with the suppliers they are long-term, so lots of good relationships with them. They're reputable, they're not going to go out of business, they're stable, and it uses well-controlled warehousing. Can all of that contribute to the new products? Again, yes. The experience of developing relationships with suppliers, the warehousing, all of that can be used to the company's benefit. So what I want you guys to do, as I said here, with practicing these questions, I'll start you off. I'll show you the thinking, I'll show you the application, the case study techniques, and then what I want you to do with each of these questions is I then want you to have a go and practice. So you can try and now identify all the other activities that we could have used here. And as we mentioned here, we need to write, and write. So 15 marks as a minimum, 15 paragraphs. As I mentioned earlier, if you have time, write more. Let's put in here first of all, so our most suitable model to review and evaluate the company's value-added activities. Let's mention it. It's going to be that Porter's value chain. As we said, that breaks up activities that the firm does into primary and support. And then what we then need to start getting into next is then each of the activities. So look, you can see in my solution here, what I'm doing is I'm going through, first of all, primary, and then next, the support or secondary. And what we need to do, let's go back to the requirement. Remember, I've said before, most important thing is what they're asking us to do. Let's explain currently in making masks, how they can use it to review and evaluate the activity. So let's do that. Here it is. Here's the second part to the question. Let's talk about what inbound is. This is receiving, handling raw materials, and currently it's executed through long-term contracts with suppliers using well-secured warehousing, ensuring that there's sufficient raw materials stored. This is for our medical mask production. That's how it creates value. Can that contribute to the new product, the new medical masks? Definitely. These stable long-term supplier contracts, they're built up with their well-controlled warehousing. This can contribute to help gather, store sufficient raw material. This is going to be for the new medical protection suits. Let's then go for operations. So again, second of all, we need to talk about currently. So look, currently, medical masks. So this relates to the manufacturing process. We saw earlier, they're fully automated, there's limited staff and manual operations. That allows the company to easily produce high quality medical masks safely in large volume. And then will it contribute to the new product? We might need to acquire maybe some new equipment, but there's no doubt that having fully automated operations can contribute here. This is to the new medical protection suits. So you can see am answering directly, I'm breaking up the examiner's requirements. They do this many, many times in Module 12, many different verbs, many different parts. But as long as you are answering directly, using the scenario, the medical masks currently, and then contributing to the new product, the medical masks, what they do here currently, contributing, this is to the new product. As long as we're doing that, we're scoring, look, mark, 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 mark. And so maybe for the memo format here that we've got, maybe a mark for that, maybe only 1 mark for talking about what is the most suitable model. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. That is more than enough to score the actual marks. And always finally here, I would just at the end, just 1 short sentence, put a little short conclusion together. So if the company implements the above recommendations, then definitely here the value chain can contribute to the development, manufacturing and selling of those new medical protection suits. Maybe another mark there at the end, but don't write too much for the conclusion. It's the application of the model. That's where the main marks are going, and that's what we need to stick to and make sure that we are discussing. Let's move on. Here was quite a difficult, tricky scenario and a question that wasn't answered that well. Let's move on. So again, let's introduce the question and then let's start thinking about our exam approach. So same as before, I've extracted, and this one's coming from December 2020. Let's look at the scenario first of all. So it says we've got a company called Wonderful Limited, or we can refer to them as One. It says they've been engaged in the original equipment manufacturing OEM trading of kitchen products business for more than 20 years. Now, I think one of the first things that students had a little difficulty with is what is OEM? What is original equipment manufacturing? Well, that means that One doesn't manufacture and brand its products, it manufactures for other businesses. So this OEM, it's often where you are, it's almost like being like a middleman. It's not business to the end consumer, it's industrial business to business. So we would be manufacturing for other companies that then would put their brand on the products. Look, let's have a little read and then you'll see what's going on here. It says they're listed, they're a family business. It says all the customers are located in North America, Mexico and Europe, and they will send sales orders to One to manufacture, this will be their kitchen products based on their specification. So if you imagine, let's think about maybe some famous kitchen brands. If we imagine somebody like Tefal or Kenwood, DeLonghi, what they're doing is they're sending their order to One, and then One must be finding manufacturers maybe in China, and then they're manufacturing that for Tefal or Kenwood, and then Tefal and Kenwood, they're placing their brand on the product. So One would not be known to the end consumer. Yeah, they are only a little middleman, industrial to industrial. Okay, fine. We've got a scenario. This is about kitchen products and kitchen trading. What we next need to then do, let's get into the requirement. Let's see what they're asking us here to do. It says, acting as an independent business consultant, reviewing major aspects of resources available to the company, it says, 1, to evaluate whether One should start the design and development of the new, this is IoT gift product. Prepare a memo to advise the board of directors based on the results above. Okay, we've read it once, But like I said to you guys, you need to read the requirement 2, 3, maybe even 4 times. First of all, let's stop for the format, memo. You now know, just put 2 in your answer book. When you start to write up your answer, you won't forget those easy marks for the format. We've got here, this is evaluate, is what they're asking us to do. So we've got another little verb there. If we go back to our verbs, we've got evaluate just here. This is going back to, again, our level 3 on page, this is A, evaluate. Assess, determine the value, importance of something. So we need to determine what? We need to determine whether one should start the design and development of, this is possibly going to be a new product. So we need to, this is for 12 marks, we need to evaluate whether they should start this new product. Well, of course, our conclusion at the end is going to be yes, they should start, or no, they should not start. But to get the 12 marks, it doesn't matter about our conclusion. What matters here is our arguments why. Why are we arguing yes, they should start? Why are we arguing no, they should not start? And of course, what's going to help us generate the ideas and provide arguments and advice, it's the models again. So what we need to do is, again, read the requirement and try to identify what would be a good model to help us generate some ideas here. Let's read it again, look. Acting as an independent consultant, what we're actually doing here is we are reviewing major aspects of resources available. So there's the hint, there's the tip, there's the key word. What model did we mention earlier that looks at and analyzes resources? We said it earlier, it's here, look. It's the 9 M's, the resource audit model. So straight away, we're thinking again about what is the hint, what is the tip in the requirement. That's the first thing. It looks like here 9 M's is going to be a good model to use. So as we start reading through here the case scenario, can it be applied? So like I said, these models here, what the models are helping you try to do is actually 2 things. The models are your friends. They're trying to help you identify and generate ideas. They're trying to help you write more. So what you can do is you can provide arguments. So it doesn't matter, as I said, about your final conclusion. You can have the opposite to the official conclusion. What matters is, are you providing relevant arguments? Are you providing relevant advice? And that's what these models help us try and do. So we need to think about at the end of this is, yes, it's appropriate, or no, it's not going to be appropriate to start this new product. Let's now go back to the scenario and let's now start thinking about the 9 M's resource audit model. So if we go back here, right back to the beginning, one of the aspects here that the model looks at is the makeup, the paintants, the branding, the marketing. And they've already said they are quite successful and they've got a reputation in the kitchen trading products industry. So this would mean that industrial business to business, remember this is OEM, this would be their makeup. So this is what they're famous for. This is their reputation is kitchen trading products. Let's carry on reading. It then says that they send orders, as we saw, this is to their customers in North America, Mexico, Europe. It says one will contract out the manufacturing process to manufacturers that are located in mainland China to manufacture and ship the kitchen products directly to the overseas customers. So one doesn't manufacture in China, one's a middleman that then subcontracts to other manufacturers that then ship the kitchen product directly to the customers. So this is talking here about the machinery. Actually, one doesn't have any machinery. It outsources. It contracts out. So can we apply the 9M's model? Yeah. You can see that here as we're reading through. I want you guys to continue on and practice. Think more about these other M's. As I said here, I'm going to start you off, show you what I want you to use in the exam, the approach, and then I want you guys to practice, practice, practice. So, okay, we've done two of the 9M's just there. Let's now start thinking about what is the new product. Is it a kitchen product? Let's have a little look. So we need to evaluate whether they should start this IoT. So, okay, what we had in this exam, if we move a little bit further down or skim red, you would have noticed they start talking here about designing and developing. This is going to be a new IoT. And explain what that is. That's a Internet of Things. So let's have a look here what they are mentioning here. It says, after attending an information technology exhibition in Europe, Mr. Peter Chow, a director of one, this is a son of the chairman. So when we have younger people, your examiner is an older person. Sometimes they may well be a little bit skeptical about younger people. So this is a son. This is somebody who is very tech aware, smartphones, things like this. And what he's saying is, he said he plans to design and develop a new Internet of Things. It says it's a gift product that uses smartphones to connect and operate electronic wireless devices via Bluetooth and the internet. This is at the office or the home. So let's start thinking first here about the manufacture here, because we don't actually manufacture ourselves. We outsource, and we outsource to kitchen product manufacturers. Would kitchen product manufacturers be very, very tech heavy? It's unlikely. Kitchen products would be very, very high tech. So maybe we'd need to find, first of all, new manufacturers. We're not familiar with this tech heavy industry. This is a very tech heavy product. So that doesn't look very good, first of all. That's totally different to what we've been doing before with the manufacture, the outsourcing of the kitchen products. Let's carry on reading. It says, this is the first time that one plans to design and develop this IoT product themselves using their own brand name. Well, hold on. We haven't got a brand name. Remember that we are operating in the OEM industry, which means that we are famous for nothing. If this is going to be the first time we're going to move into an area, why don't we move in an area at least where we've got some experience, and that is kitchen products. This is a very tech-heavy product. It's going to require a lot of heavy promotion in an area where we have no experience. So, is it looking good? Do we think it's a good idea? Well, it's not looking great so far. So look, you can see what the model is helping us try to do. The model is helping us to generate ideas, provide arguments and advice, and then finally form a conclusion. So again, what I've done here, if you turn across the next page, again, look, we've got the memo format. Don't forget that just there. So to, from, the exam date, and then a little heading, subject. This is reviewing resources, evaluation of this gift product. Then I'm going to talk about the model that I'm going to be using here So this is going to be reviewing the major aspects of resource available to one. Let's mention the model now. This is going to be using now 9M's resource audit model. And then we can use that to evaluate whether or not we're going to start the GIFT project. So what I'm then doing is, you can see, look, I'm starting to now go through. This is going to be our 9M's. Let's start with machinery, first of all. What we mentioned earlier is that one does not own any machinery to build this IoT GIFT products. What we said earlier is they contract out, they rely on their existing Chinese manufacturers to manufacture products they know, and that's the kitchen products. It's doubtful whether these existing mainland Chinese manufacturers can manufacture. This is going to be very, very tech heavy, this IoT GIFT product successfully. So if we were to do this, it's possible that we'd need to find manufacturers with appropriate machinery and expertise before we can start that. Let's then think about the branding, the marketing. One has got a strong brand name in the kitchen products. This is OEM industry. That's good in the industrial business-to-business market, but here's the problem. They have got no reputation here in the IoT, which would be towards the end consumer. That would be the product retail market. Here's the problem. Since one is not famous for technology products, they will not be able to leverage the goodwill, the branding in that new business field. So it looks like, doesn't look a good idea. Yeah, this is a completely different product area in a retail consumer market that we've never operated in. So what the examiners want you to do is use the model here to generate ideas, provide arguments, and then a conclusion. So look, you can see I'm going through machinery 1, makeup, this is 2, there's management here 3, you can see we've got management information, that's 4, we've got the market 5, there's materials 6, there's manpower 7, there's methods, that's 8, and then finally we need money to support all this, that's going to be 9. Again, I'm writing more than the marks here. So if we go back to the marks, let's go back here and let's again remind ourselves of the marks. This was for 12 marks. And so you would have got marks also for the format and the choice of the model. So maybe 1 mark there for the format, another mark for talking about the model. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And then always at the end, don't forget a little conclusion as well. I'm concluding, you don't have to agree, but I'm concluding here that we should not start the project. We don't have sufficient resources to start the GIFT product in many areas that I've outlined above. Again, what's important isn't just the use of the model, but again, look, I'm using the name of the scenario here. So I'm going blah, 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 1, IoT, blah, 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 1, this is IoT, blah, 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 1, IoT. That's what we need to be doing. Applying, application. Don't worry about copying, don't go back to the notes, don't go back to the learning pack. You need to think, what is the model? And then apply the model in your own words. Yeah, by putting it into your own words, you can support your arguments, you can support your advice, you can all generate ideas. But certainly, that was, I think, one of the most difficult questions that we've had. Certainly more difficult than the one when we had that 16% pass rate Pestel. I thought that Pestel one, I thought that was quite easy to answer. That question there, 9M's, is much more difficult. Couple more questions, and then I think we'll take another little break on this. So let's continue on. I've got more questions I want you to practice just here. Let's move on. So this is page now 1-17. Again, I've extracted. This is another recent question from June 2021. Let's read the scenario first. So we've got a company here called Nova Group. The group, it says they're engaged in the trading of fashionable clothes and accessories. They've been listed in Hong Kong for many, many years. It says the group receives purchase orders from customers who are mainly in Europe and the United States, and then outsources manufacturing of the fashionable clothes to mainland China. So actually, again, we've got another OEM, another industrial business-to-business company here, but this time now, of course, not kitchen products. This is in fashion areas of clothes and accessories. Fine. Let's then go down to the requirements. Let's look here what they're asking us to do. So we'll look at another big, large requirement again. 16 marks. It says, acting as the finance director of the group, we need to prepare a memo. So stop what you're doing. 2, in your answer book, you remember to fill it in when you go back and start writing up your answer. Let's see what we need to do just here. It says we need to evaluate the external competitive environments, and so let's put a little slash through that. So that's going to be the first thing that we need to do just here. Second thing, it says the financial performance of the group contributing, it says here, to poor business and financial performance of the Nova B2B, so that's business to business, business support, financial performance with calculations. So again, you can see these professional marks. 2 marks, communication skill. That'll be for the memo format. That will be then for the choice of methods you were using. And then analytical skills, that will be identifying important facts, issues from the scenario and bringing those out. So we've got here, this is 2 major areas that we've got. We've got evaluating the external competitive environment, and we've got the financial performance of the group. Now, you're never going to know exactly how much marks are being allocated to each part, but very roughly here, if we think about half the marks, so maybe somewhere around about 8 marks for the strategic evaluation, and then very roughly here, around about 8 marks, this is going to be for the financial evaluation. They're giving us a hint here as well. Look, it says support the financial performance with calculations. Now, we haven't yet done this. This is also in this set 1 set of notes. A little bit later on, you're going to see in chapter 8, we're going to start getting into ratio analysis. Now, what you need to understand here is that the calculations don't get many marks. So around about 1/3 of the marks are for the calculations for financial performance, but it's 2/3 of the marks you need to write. So these are coming from the comments. It's not just doing calculation and leaving it. You're not going to get many marks for the calculation. It's doing the calculations and then commenting. The comments, you get a lot more marks from, around about 2/3 of the marks. So 2/3 of 8 of the marks you will be getting from the comments. Now, I don't want to get into ratio analysis now. We will talk about it later on. It's going to be covered in our chapter 8 towards the end of this set 1 set of notes. Like I said, I want to focus here on chapter 1. Let's come back here to what they mentioned here. It says evaluate external competitive environments. Well, first of all, a good model for any external evaluation, this is going to be Pestel. So that's one external model that we can use here. But then look, they're mentioning competitive environment. What model looked at the competitive environment? What model included the competition? Yeah, it was that 5 forces model. So here, to get the marks, I wouldn't have maybe just used one model. I would have used maybe a combination of models here. There's external Pestel, there's the competitive environment, that would be our 5 forces model. Don't be afraid in the exam to use maybe 2 models if there's information in the scenario. If there's no information, then ignore it, because the same as before, you're thinking about, okay, what hints and tips are in the requirement, and then what can we use here in the scenario. So straight away, you can see that here, this company is trading fashion, clothes and accessories. What is that? Well, that's all to do with social trends. Fashion changes rapidly. Now let's go back to the requirement here, because what we need to do is we need to explain and evaluate how these factors here, the external, the competitive environment factors, contributed to poor business or financial performance. So for instance here, if we were not following the social trends, that would be very, very bad if we're operating in the fashion industry. There's other things here as well. Look, you can see they mention about competition. So competition, this would be 5 forces we could be using there as well. So don't feel if you're going to be using a model, you need to talk about all Pestel. Just use what is in the scenario. What I, again, want you guys to be doing is practicing these questions. I don't want to go through them all in lots of detail. I want you to have a go. Look, if you turn to my solution across on the next page, you can see to get these 16 marks, maybe somewhere around about 8 marks for the first part just here. We want this to, from, the date, and then memo formats, put the subject in. And then what I'm going to say is the best models to evaluate the external competitive environment. I'm going to use some Pestel. I'm going to use some Porter's 5 forces. And then look, you can then see here, based on Pestel, social trends in fashion clothes constantly changing. Although we act as business to business, receiving purchase from overseas, any changes, this is in customer trends that are not recognized, this would contribute towards business and financial performance. Technology, if we don't respond, again, that will lead to poor business and financial performance. So the requirement was asking us how this could contribute to poor business and financial performance. We need to make sure, using the models, we are telling them how. All of this could give us problems. There's Pestel. I also want you to have a little think here about Porter's 5 forces. We're going to be using that model as well. There's some facts and issues from the scenario I want you guys to practice. And then finally, second part to the question here is then the financial performance. So although we're going to be doing this late in chapter 8, let's just introduce it now. For these financial performance questions, the first thing to do is stick down your ratios. Don't choose too many ratios, maximum of 5. We'll talk more about ratio analysis in chapter 8, but don't do too many ratios, because the problem is you've got time here. 8 marks, that's not much time. So I'm just going to do here 3 or maybe at the most 4. What you need to do is stick down your calculations. So there's lots of different ways of calculating these ratios. Always should have formulas you use in the calculations. We'll talk more about this. But as I mentioned earlier, you don't get many marks for the calculations, so don't spend too much time on them. Only around about 1/3 of the marks are for the calculations. So if we go back here, this is to the 8 marks. Roughly we said this is going to be worth about 8 marks. So that's going to be very, very roughly about 2 or 3 marks. So don't do any more than maybe 3, at the maximum 4. Maybe only getting 1 mark for each of these ratios there, roughly. And then we need to spend more time here on the written comments. So you're going to get more marks here for providing these comments. So this is where we need to be writing. So look, this is maybe too much now. 2/3 of the marks here, maybe 5 or 6 marks out of those 8. So this is more than required. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's way too much. But again, if you can produce more, that's always going to be better. So what you need to do for the comments is this. First of all, we need to use, of course, the ratios we've been calculating above. Return on capital employed, debt to equity ratio, this is interest coverage and current ratio. And to score more marks, 2 things. I'll talk more in chapter 8 about this. What you need to do is first of all discuss what does the ratio show. So return on capital employed has dropped. This shows significant decline in profitability. And then next, for a next mark, explain how has the business achieved it, how has it got there, what has it been caused by. So although sales turnover figures are not given, the large fall is likely to be caused by the external pestle impacts, an unfavourable competitive environment. So for each of these ratios you've calculated, you can actually generate 2 marks. This is per ratio calculated. 5 or 6 marks, maybe 2 or 3 ratios would have been way enough to get all of these marks. And then finally, at the end, again, I will put a little conclusion here. So although further information would be useful, maybe some kind of external comparative information, again, we'll talk more about financial performance later, chapter 8, always comparing what's happening in the industry or a competitor is always great. You can see here overall, poor financial performance is worsening combined with a difficult external competitive environment. That means that this company is performing badly and actually moving towards business failure. That should be more than enough there to get those 60 marks. Couple more questions. Here's another recent one. If we continue on, this is another good question here to practice. I'm going to mostly leave this for you guys to practice. It's a recent one from June 2022, and surprising here what they did is they told you the model they wanted you to use. This company was called Space Health Limited. We can refer to them in our answer as the company. They are listed in Hong Kong. What do they do? They manufacture various health products. And what they was wanting us to do here in the requirement, it said here, referring to Porter's 5 forces, we had to advise what external analysis should be performed, assessing the impacts, this is of our strategic decision of the above acquisition. So in this scenario here above, they gave you a scenario. This lady called Catherine is considering expanding the product line by acquiring a factory. This company was called Porthouse Mass Limited, or in other words, that's the target that we're trying to buy. And what they can do is they can manufacture medical masks and PP kit in Hong Kong, and its products are already certified with various international standards for use in surgery and virus protection. So here we didn't need to identify the model, but again, look for hints if they want you to suggest a suitable model. Hints would have been things about the competitive environment. So that's always our Porter's 5 forces. And so here, they've told you the model to use. What I want you guys to do is think here about what you could have been mentioning and discussing for the 5 forces. The threats of new entrants, the threats of substitutes, the bargaining power of customers, the power of suppliers, and competitive rivalry. Finally, with a conclusion. So I'll leave that for you guys to practice there. That one we didn't need to guess the model. Finally, I think a last important question here, this was now some years ago, so this is an old question now, but it's still a good question. No changes. SWOT today is the same as it was 13 years ago. This is that SWOT analysis question that was another quite large question here. Let's have a little look at SWOT. If this is tested, we need to be able to answer these styles of questions well. It says, Mr. CM Chung is Managing Director of GOM Company Limited. So we can refer to this company as GOM. What do they do? It says the company mainly manufactures fancy scented candles for the Hong Kong market. Fine. Let's then look at the requirement. So down here, they said for 14 marks, assuming you Mr. Tommy Lau, what we need to do is perform a SWOT analysis to summarize the challenges, opportunities for Mr. Chung. He was the managing director to consider. So for 14 marks, they've told us the model to use. This is going to be here our SWOT analysis. And what we need to start thinking about here is how much we should be writing for each one of these SWOT elements. So if we take the 14 marks and divide it by 4, roughly, that's going to be around about 3 or 4 marks. So we're going to need 3 or 4 strengths, 3 or 4 weaknesses, 3 or 4 opportunities, 3 or 4 threats. Now, for strengths and weaknesses, they should be quite easy to identify. So all we need to do is identify what's good, what they are doing, what's bad, what they are doing. Remember, we said internal, controllable. But remember, for the opportunities and the threats, these are external. So to help you identify opportunities and threats, it's those 2 models that are very, very popular. PESTEL is a good one to help you, and 5 Forces is again another good model to help you think about opportunities and threats. Now, it's not good enough just saying this is a strength. To get the full marks, you need to explain why. Why is that a strength? Why is that a weakness? Why is that an opportunity? Or why is that a threat? Let's go back to the start of this scenario. Let's have a little read through and let's start thinking about the SWOT analysis. So let's go back to the beginning here. Let's have a little look. It says the company was established by CM's father in the 1960s. Let's stop just there. Where could we use that? They've been established since 1960. So what would that be? What would that give the company? That would be a strength. Because what we could be talking about here is they will benefit from many, many years of experience in candle making, manufacturing, market knowledge, anything. We need to say why that is a good strength. Let's continue reading on. It says the factory premises are owner-occupied with a floor area of 10,000 square feet. Let's stop there. What's good about that? We own the premises. It means we don't need to worry about rental increases. We don't need to think about moving facilities. But oh, hold on. It's in an old factory building, therefore. So maybe that could be a problem with maybe the machinery can be using for our production. What I want you guys to do, I don't want to go through all these questions again. I'm leaving these for you guys to practice. And then again, what you've got here is you've got my solutions here on the next page. So look, here's the strengths. GOM was established many years ago in the 1960s. So that won't score marks. To get the marks, we need to explain why that's a strength. So they will benefit from strengths in things like experience of candle making, manufacturing, and market knowledge. Then as we saw, the factory premises are large, they're owner occupied. That'll be providing strengths to folks who have on production, manufacturing. They don't need to worry about rental increases or movements in facilities. So to get the marks here, you need to bring out the fact, bring out the issue, and explain why. Why it's a strength, why it's a weakness, why it's an opportunity, why it's a threat. And again, look, I'm using GOM, GOM, GOM. I'm applying it. I'm using the scenario. 3 or 4 strengths. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 10 already. And then look, opportunities and threats. I'm thinking about using PESTEL. So I'm talking here about PESTEL there. And then threats, I'm talking about things like maybe competition, maybe some social threats, legal threats, that type of thing. SWOT, be aware of it. What you need to do is practice. So get back to the questions here. Go back to all the questions we've been talking about in this part 2 video and see if you can start to apply some of the models and applied to the scenario, using again those specific issues and facts. What we're going to do, let's end our part 2 video there, and we're going to move on in our strategic plan. So we've now done analysis, we've now been thinking about direction. What we next need to start thinking about is decision choices. So which direction we can move in, how we can get to where we want to go. We'll talk more about that. That's going to be in our part 3 video. So see you guys soon in part 3. Let's take a short break now and see you very soon for our part 3. See you soon. Bye.